Nigerians woke up to the news that the Central Bank of Nigeria had revoked Heritage Bank's license on Monday, June 3, according to the regulator. It became imperative after several efforts by the Deposit Money Bank's board and management to improve the bank's financial performance yielded no results. Now, the Apex Bank said it was taking action due to the Heritage Bank's breach of Section 12, subsection 1 of the BOFIA Act, of course, the year 2020. So this morning, joining us today to shed light on this situation is Tunji Andrew, CEO Awaba. Thank you so much, Tunji Andrew, for joining us on Business Edge.
Thank you for having me.
So many Nigerians woke up to the news that Heritage Bank's license had been revoked. Was that something you saw in the offing?
Heritage Bank has been having a few issues in the past, not any issues that are specifically unique to them. I know that at least a month ago or so, there was a labor union reaction to them letting go 1,000 members of their staff. Their chairman was removed or left, or was no longer with the bank. There have been some issues, but none have been to the extent that we expected that the license was going to be removed. Of course, there were rumors here and there, but nothing concrete enough to be able to give pointers to the fact that the license would be revoked.
Okay, you actually highlighted some peculiarities as regards Heritage Bank, but then let's look at it from a broader perspective now. Are there violations, or what kind of violations or events would often prompt the revocation of bank licenses by an Apex Bank?
So you must understand how banks work. So ultimately, a lot of the times banks generally start with a little capital, generally put together by shareholders, and then they go out and raise depositors' funds, your deposit, my deposit, and that is what makes up the entire portfolio that the bank has. And it is from that portfolio the bank is able to then loan, make profit, increase the bottom line, increase the balance sheet, and things like that. The problem starts to arise when you have things like non-performing loans. And once those non-performing loans start to increase, remember that the shareholders' capital is just a very little part of the entire funds in the bank. Most of it is depositors' funds. So if non-performing loans are beginning to expand, it starts to make the regulator worry. And the regulator in this place has had to, step in quickly to ensure that, depositors are protected from an expanding non-performing portfolio as it is.
In stepping in, the Central Bank of Nigeria cited that the bank, of course, was not being able to improve its financial performance. That's in its explanation. But then I like to consider it from different angles. You've made mention of some inhibitors or some internal crises within that could have necessitated the revocation of its license and its downward spiral in terms of its performance. But then are there other external factors that we may need to be looking at, owing to the fact that there are several policies that have been rolled out of late by the Apex Bank and the pre-existing challenges in the financial sector? Maybe that, in a way, might have affected its performance in a way.
I don't think so. Heritage is not the only bank in Nigeria. There are many other banks. There are even regional banks. There are microfinance banks that are still doing fantastic. I do not think it's as a result of the regulators' demands on the bank. However, the banking business in itself is one that you run a very tight ship. You might hear of banks, declaring billions in profit, but that is out of a very, very strict methodology in terms of lending, taking back, earning profit. So if a bank is not, if it's not stable internally and you have a little to the left, a little to the right, things can go bad very quickly, as we have seen in this case. But I want to commend the CBN, and I know that we do not commend them a lot, But this is one time where, making this news public was one that I'm sure that they knew that will cause a bit of, worry from the general public. But they still had to step out and let the general public know that this is a concern they have and they had to revoke this license. And we've also seen that some fake news has started to go around since yesterday that, oh, this bank is going through this bank is going through that. But generally, like I said, nothing that is happening to or happened to Heritage Bank that is not happening to other banks in the industry, and they're still thriving.
Now, we're talking about stabilizing the bank's trend. The CBN revealed that after engagement with Heritage Bank, it prescribed various supervisory steps intended to stem the decline, but sadly, that actually failed. So when a bank is on a downward slope like this, what are the mitigating measures that are usually brought on board to slow the tide, whether or not it works?
First of all, it's to caution lending. Is to caution lending basically, and to enforce recovery. You've given out a few people money, get it back. It's just as simple as that. At the end of the day, if you lend money and you are able to receive all the money you've lent out, it's easy to be able to continue moving. However, if you are unable to get that money back and you still keep lending, there is a problem. It's either you do not realize that there's a problem, or you just do not have the internal controls to be able to properly regulate a banking business. So I think the central bank, they did say it, they made several steps to try and get the bank in the right purview. I know that the central bank would have done a lot to ensure that this was the last point of call, generally because you don't want to hear news of a license of a bank being revoked. It's just not good news for anybody in any industry. Well, this would have been a situation where the central bank would have taken extra measure, but unfortunately, we have gotten ourselves here.
Well, I like the fact that you mentioned the fact that there are issues around lending, either to people or to institutions or to corporate organizations, and the inability of this bank to get the money back. And earlier on, you said that it has nothing to do with the policies of the Central Bank of Nigeria. But then you discovered that within this financial climate that Nigeria has been in the last, 1 year, it's been quite hard for institutions that have approached banks to secure loans, either for investments or for personal use, to be able to pay the money back. Why? Because of monetary policies of the CBN, hiking interest rates and all that, and the choky environment for these businesses, and the fact that maybe these businesses, after investing their funds, are not able to recoup on investment because of how the ease of doing business is not that favorable, and some other factors that have actually affected the profitability of these businesses. So if we do not tie it in a way to what the CBN has done so far in terms of policies, then maybe we are not too sure about what we mean when it comes to policies of government and how it has affected businesses, operations, their ability to recoup on funds and to pay back with interests that has gone up in the last couple of months.
So every bank in the world has people who they hire, who their specific job is to analyze credit, and also to be able to analyze credit to each particular sector. So every year there is conversations about the oil and gas sector, manufacturing, real estate, and those things are what guides the bank's lending portfolio going forward, because generally there are people who they've paid, who have the experience to be able to say, okay, there is instability in this particular sector, there's instability here, do not go here, here go heavy, here do not go too heavy. Yes, it is true that the economy itself has been fragile over the last maybe 12 to 16 to 18 months. That is without doubt. My point is that every bank has people who are paid a lot of money, by the way, to be able to advise the bank on where to adequately lend. So it is not an excuse, and this is not me being insensitive. I totally understand the pain of the shareholders and the board of Heritage Bank. This must be a very trying time for them, but I do not want us to blame it on the economy because, to blame it on the economy would say that Heritage Bank didn't have professionals in-house, and they do, without doubt, they do have professionals. So whatever happened that made them get to this point is unfortunate, but I don't think we should blame the economy.
All right, finally, NDIC has been appointed as the liquidator. What should depositors expect from here?
So this is the big part, and this is the worrying part. The first line of action is 500,000. That is covered. But for people who have more than that, they will have to wait for NDIC to liquidate assets and recover funds from where they possibly can, and then start to pay out from that. It's going to be a tedious and long process, and I do not envy anybody that has a lot of money in the bank right now. Our prayers are with them, but the NDIC have a long-standing experience of dealing with issues like this, and I know that they will make it as light as possible for depositors of the bank.
Okay, so finally, before I let you go, Tunji, recently the NDIC increased the maximum deposit insurance coverage for depositors of deposit money banks from 500,000 naira to about 5 million naira. Now, this was early last month anyway. So will the bank's depositors benefit from this increase, or how will it likely work out?
So I didn't want to speak to that because I wasn't sure if it was already in flow. So if it is actually it has been instituted and it's not just still a bill being passed, then this is better news. But still, 5 million will not be compared to what some people have in their bank holdings. Some companies will have their accounts with the bank right now, and they will be paying salaries, overhead from there. What happens to those companies in this particular time? So, we just have to, pray for depositors at this particular time, and pray that God comforts them.
And we hope that this trend will not actually continue, because it's going to be debilitating for the financial sector. Tunji Andrew, CEO, Awaba, thank you so much for talking to us at this time.
Thank you for having me.